Have you ever been around someone who just seems to possess an almost uncanny, quiet control over their surroundings? They don't need to shout, they don't plead or demand. They simply seem to withdraw, to pull back their energy, and almost like magic, everything around them shifts. The very atmosphere changes. People start to second-guess themselves, to lean in, to almost chase after whatever it is they feel slipping away. Now, pause for a second and really picture this. What if you could do the same? What if, instead of that knee-jerk reaction to every little thing, every demand, every emotional nudge, you chose a different path? Imagine opting for quiet contemplation when an immediate response is expected, or taking a deliberate step back when the world wants you to explode into action. Can you even begin to imagine the ripple effects? This is precisely where an incredible, often untapped power lies. The moment you consciously decide to stop being perpetually available, emotionally, physically, and mentally, the world around you, and particularly the people in it, often experiences a jolt. They're so used to your predictability, to knowing exactly how you'll react, to navigating your responses like a well-worn map. But the day you choose to withdraw, to become more of a mystery than an open book, the entire dynamic changes. And those individuals who thought they had you all figured out, they're about to realize they barely scratched the surface. It's a subtle conditioning, isn't it? From a young age, many of us are nudged, sometimes overtly, sometimes through unspoken expectations, to always be present, to answer quickly, to aim to please, to say yes, even when our inner voice is screaming a resounding no. We've been trained to believe that our worth is somehow tied to how readily available we are to others. But here's a truth that often gets lost in the noise of societal pressure. This constant, over-the-top availability isn't a virtue, it's a gilded cage. As long as you operate under the assumption that you must be accessible around the clock, you're essentially volunteering to be subtly manipulated, to have your precious energy drained, and quite frankly, to be overlooked the moment you're no longer perceived as immediately useful. When you're always there, always agreeable, you become predictable. And anything that's entirely predictable can, unfortunately, become a tool. People might start to see you as an emotional quick fix, someone to turn to when they need a burst of attention, validation, or comfort, only to put you back on the shelf once their immediate need is met. You might not even be fully aware this is happening, caught in the well-meaning belief that being there for everyone else will somehow ensure someone will be truly there for you. We all wear masks to navigate the social world, adapting ourselves to fit in, to be liked, to gain recognition. It's this very tendency that can trap us in a cycle of being overly available. We might say, "I'm fine," when we're actually crumbling inside. We might respond to messages instantly, even when we're bone-tired and desperately need a break. We find ourselves over-explaining, justifying our choices, defending our positions as if we owe the world a minute-by-minute report of our lives. But the stark reality is, the more you star in other people's dramas, the more you fade into the background of your own life story. This constant need to be available is a quiet form of self-neglect. It's a hidden quest for approval, a strategy to avoid rejection, an attempt to control how others see you. But this illusion of control is incredibly costly, and the price is often your inner peace, your vital life force, which gets spread thin as if it were an endless commodity, when in fact it's a precious, finite resource. Often, people who demand your constant presence don't truly want you for who you are. They want what you provide, be it a listening ear, a dose of validation, a distraction from their own discomfort, or emotional support. The moment you dare to shift this dynamic, to set a clear boundary, or to simply not react in the old expected way, these same people might become irritated, accuse you of having changed, or even label you as difficult or strange. It's rarely because you've actually done something wrong. It's more often because you've stopped being conveniently functional for their agenda. And here's a rather uncomfortable truth. The more readily available you make yourself, the less inherent value others may unconsciously assign to you. When something is always abundantly present, it can unfortunately be taken for granted. We tend not to deeply respect what we don't have to make an effort for. and we often undervalue what's simply always there. So, take a quiet moment for yourself and ask with genuine honesty, who truly merits your valuable time, your focused attention, your authentic presence, your empathetic ear? And perhaps even more profoundly, who merits the powerful statement of your conscious absence? To truly grasp why we often react so strongly and give our power away so easily, we need to consider our inner world as a kind of energy system. Think of your mind and emotions as holding a finite reserve of energy. Every thought you entertain, every emotion you experience, every action you take draws from this personal wellspring. The crucial question then becomes, are you consciously directing where this precious energy goes? Or are you letting external circumstances and other people's demands dictate its flow? Every time you react impulsively, without pausing for thought, you're essentially allowing this vital energy to leak away. When you find yourself getting drawn into defending against a minor criticism that barely warranted your attention, when you jump to respond to a provocation just to prove you're right, when you get entangled in pointless, draining arguments, or when you overextend yourself trying to please those who consistently don't appreciate your efforts, you are spending your inner strength on things that don't truly nourish or replenish you. There's a saying that what you resist often persists, and it holds true here. The more you react against something, the more you bind your energy to it. People who constantly feel emotionally drained aren't necessarily lacking in strength. Often, their energy is just consistently misdirected. And what happens when someone is always running on empty? They become far more vulnerable. When your energetic defenses are low, you become an easier mark. Individuals who are manipulative, opportunistic, or chronically needy often have a keen sense for this kind of vulnerability. They can pick up on cues that you don't know how to protect your energy, that you react to everything, that you're always trying to fix things for everyone else, and they may consciously or unconsciously take advantage of that. A healthy, resilient mind knows how to conserve and manage its energy effectively. This means learning to say no without being consumed by guilt, mastering the art of remaining silent when silence is the most powerful response, and developing the wisdom to observe a situation fully before deciding on a course of action. Real strength isn't found in the immediacy or intensity of your reaction. It's found in the conscious, deliberate choice of when and how to engage. This level of discernment, however, only comes when you understand yourself well enough to recognize your own habitual impulses and emotional triggers. How many restless nights have you spent replaying an unresolved issue in your mind? How many hours have you lost to stewing over what you should have said, or trying to figure out why someone treated you in a way that felt unfair? This is your vital energy being siphoned away, often with no positive return, keeping alive old narratives that should have faded and feeding dynamics that only continue because you keep responding to them. Imagine your personal energy as a protective field around you. When it's well managed and strong, it creates an undeniable presence, a sense of self-possession that can command respect without you uttering a single word. But when it's poorly managed and depleted, you can feel invisible, overly reactive and fragile. And the world, unfortunately, doesn't always show much kindness to those who seem to give in too easily. So start by becoming a keen observer of your own internal landscape. What situations, people, or comments consistently make you react automatically? What are the things that reliably throw you off your center? These are the precise points where your energy is likely escaping, and these are the areas that need your gentle but firm attention, not with the aim of becoming cold or indifferent, but to become thoughtfully selective, to reclaim sovereignty over your own being. When you begin to consciously conserve your energy, you start to dismantle the distorted images and expectations that others may have unfairly placed upon you. This can be deeply unsettling for some because it forces them to confront their own issues rather than projecting them onto you. You might think you're always in control of your responses, believing your reactions are purely conscious choices. But the truth can be a bit more complex. Many of our emotional responses are, to some extent, programmed by past experiences and ingrained habits. And those who understand this, even intuitively, can sometimes manipulate situations with surprising ease. Opportunistic people don't always need to raise their voices, make threats, or force anything. They often just need to subtly poke at those emotional buttons you've left exposed, and you might find yourself reacting in predictable ways, time and time again. This happens when people project onto others the very things they can't or won't see in themselves. There's another side to this though. While others might be projecting their own stuff onto you, you can also become a kind of unintentional screen for these images, especially the more emotionally available and accommodating you are. You might inadvertently become a blank canvas for their unresolved issues. Think about that acquaintance who only seems to surface when they're in the midst of a crisis, or the person who always needs you to swoop in and save the day, or even someone who showers you with praise, but only as long as you're fulfilling a specific need for them. None of this is typically by chance. They aren't always relating to the real you. They're often relating to an idea of you, to the role you've consciously or unconsciously agreed to play. And why do we sometimes agree to these roles? Often it stems from a fear of disappointing others, a fear of not being liked, or a deep-seated fear of being abandoned. The most effective manipulation isn't always loud and aggressive. It often thrives in the quiet undercurrents of guilt, in those moments when you feel an unspoken obligation to someone, when you believe you need to be available, you need to help, you need to understand, even when doing so is chipping away at your own well-being. The manipulator doesn't necessarily need to exert overt control over you. They often just need you to keep reacting in the same old patterns. But when you consciously choose to stop reacting in those familiar ways, the entire game breaks down. When you start saying a clear no, when you respond with thoughtful silence instead of a flurry of explanations, when you choose to withdraw instead of justifying yourself, the projections people have placed on you begin to lose their power. The mask they might have inadvertently or intentionally put on you starts to crumble. This can leave people feeling very unsettled, because suddenly they no longer recognize the you they thought they knew. Even more uncomfortably for them, they might be forced to look at themselves, and not everyone is ready or willing to do that. Your unavailability becomes a threat because it compels others to confront their own inner emptiness, their own unaddressed needs. The silence you offer can amplify the internal noise they've been trying so hard to ignore. And that's often when the pushback comes. The criticism, the emotional drama, the accusations. This isn't usually because you're genuinely in the wrong. It's because you've stopped serving as a convenient mirror or a dumping ground for their unresolved issues. There's a deep wisdom in the idea that we don't reach enlightenment by merely imagining figures of light, but by courageously making our own darkness conscious, by understanding our hidden aspects. When you withdraw your energy from these draining dynamics, when you stop feeding the cycle, the unacknowledged parts of others' personalities, their own shadows, can begin to surface more clearly for them. And this can be unbearable for those who have always relied on you as an escape or a distraction. But what about you? Are you prepared to navigate the discomfort of being misunderstood, perhaps even rejected or subtly attacked for the sake of protecting your own inner space? Are you ready to endure the silence that might follow a rupture, knowing that it's in that very silence that a new kind of authentic power can be born? The modern world is incredibly noisy, isn't it? Everyone seems to be clamoring to be heard, to respond at lightning speed, to win pointless debates, and to prove their point, even if it means sacrificing their own peace of mind. Yet, there's a profound power that few truly understand and even fewer master. The power of deliberate silence. This isn't the silence of passivity, fear, or cowardice, but a conscious, strategic, and sometimes brutally lucid silence. It's the kind of silence that isn't an absence, but rather an amplified, potent presence. Silence, when chosen intentionally, isn't just an empty void. It's fertile ground for inner transformation and profound self-discovery. When you stop automatically reacting, you create the space to truly observe. And in that observation, you begin to see patterns that were previously invisible. The emotional repetitions in your interactions, the subtle games of manipulation, the cycles of self-sabotage you might have been caught in. Silence allows for clarity, and clarity is a powerful antidote to those who thrive on keeping you in a state of confusion or reactivity. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to almost panic when you don't respond immediately, when you don't offer an explanation, when you simply disappear from the usual back and forth? It's often not because they genuinely miss your presence in a healthy way. It's because your silence disrupts their narrative and wrests control from their hands. As long as you're talking, explaining, and engaging on their terms, you're still playing their game. But when you choose silence, you fundamentally change the rules, and that can unbalance anyone who depends on your predictable reactions. True, powerful silence isn't merely the absence of your voice, it's the mastery over your own energy. It's the conscious refusal to be dragged into the vortex of someone else's emotional turmoil. It's the deliberate choice not to engage in battles that simply aren't worth your precious energy or your peace. The journey of becoming who you truly are often requires a degree of distancing from the noise, a stepping back so you can hear your own inner voice without the world's constant interference. But make no mistake, choosing this path of conscious silence can come with a social cost. It will likely distance you from people who only valued you for the role you played, not for who you authentically are. It might make you seem incomprehensible to those who only saw you through the lens of their own projections and needs. You might even be perceived as cold, distant, or arrogant. However, these are often reactions from those who were never truly interested in engaging with your depth, only with your utility. And here's a truth that often comes with maturity. The more you grow, the more selective you become with your words, because you begin to understand that each sentence, each engagement, is an investment of your energy. Not everyone deserves access to your innermost thoughts or your full emotional bandwidth. Sometimes, silence isn't a retreat, it's an act of sovereignty. It's the quiet language of those who no longer feel the need to prove anything to anyone. Silence is uncomfortable for many because it forces the other person to confront their own thoughts, their own internal chatter, their own unresolved feelings. This discomfort can reveal far more about them than any argument or explanation from you ever could. You don't always need to explain your absence. Your absence, when chosen consciously, often explains itself. And those who feel threatened by it inadvertently reveal just how much they relied on your previous imbalance to maintain their own sense of control. But the most potent form of silence isn't the one that merely disturbs others. It's the silence that reconstructs you from within. It's the silence that connects you to something deeper than external approval. A quiet space where you can begin to recover your vital energy and reconnect with your core essence. It's not enough to just cut out external noise. You need to relearn how to use your energy consciously, to choose where it flows, where it stays, and most importantly, where it should never again be wasted. It's about learning to be truly selective with your own soul. Understanding all of this intellectually is one thing, but true change only happens when you put it into practice. If you continue saying yes when your heart means no, if you keep responding to messages that drain you, if you keep participating in conversations that feel empty, and if you maintain relationships that exist purely out of habit or obligation, then awareness without action is just another form of self-deception. Real transformation ignites when you make a firm, unwavering decision to become truly selective, and this requires a good dose of emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability isn't about becoming cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It's about no longer being universally accessible to anyone at any time for any reason that doesn't align with your well-being. It's about reclaiming control over your own energy, your own time, and your own precious peace. This often starts with small, deliberate actions, not responding immediately to every single message, taking a conscious breath before reacting to a trigger, gracefully exiting a discussion before it devolves into chaos, turning off your phone without a pang of guilt, and learning to say, "Not today, I'm not interested," or "I won't get involved in that." And here's a crucial part. You don't always need to justify your absence or explain your silence. You don't owe an elaborate explanation to everyone for protecting your peace. Your primary responsibility is to yourself. For many people, this can be a hard pill to swallow because when you refuse to over-explain, you take away their power to keep you locked within an emotional narrative where you are always the helpful, understanding, ever-accessible one. The journey to becoming your authentic self often involves periods of intentional solitude, not a depressive, isolating loneliness, but a sacred, restorative retreat. This is a time for inner reflection, where you relearn to listen to your own voice without the cacophony of external opinions, where you rebuild your identity not based on how others see you, but from your own solid center. If you want a good indicator of your progress, observe who starts to distance themselves from you when you become more reserved. Notice who tries to provoke a reaction from you when you stop readily giving one. Pay attention to who accuses you of having changed when you finally begin to protect your boundaries and prioritize your well-being. These are not necessarily signs that you're doing something wrong. More often, they are clear proof that you have begun to liberate yourself. Being consciously unavailable can feel uncomfortable at first. You might grapple with guilt, thinking you're being selfish. You might hear whispers or even direct comments that you're being too harsh or distant. This is all part of the deconstruction process. You've likely spent a significant portion of your life being conditioned to put others' needs before your own, so it's natural that shifting this pattern will cause discomfort, not only within you, but also in those who benefited from your old, overly accommodating ways. Conscious unavailability is the bedrock of self-determination. When you say no to the demands of the world that drain you, you are saying a profound yes to yourself. When you withdraw from a toxic environment or a draining interaction, you are reaffirming that your peace is more valuable than any superficial connection. And when you stop feeling the need to constantly explain yourself, you begin to cultivate a quiet, undeniable respect, even if it's from a smaller circle of people. But not everyone will be ready for this kind of authentic presence, because your newfound emotional centeredness might unintentionally expose wounds they don't want to face. It might reveal just how much they depended on your previous emotional availability to feel a sense of control or stability in their own lives. It is at this juncture that ruptures can occur, and with ruptures can come a sense of pain, loneliness, or estrangement, a feeling that you are losing something, when in fact you are often just freeing yourself. But what happens after the initial discomfort, after the distancing, after the silence? What is born from these intentional choices? When you stop being constantly available to everyone for everything, something profound begins to unfold. First, there's often an initial silence, an almost uncomfortable quiet that might feel loud inside your own head. You might question if you've done the right thing, if you're being too severe, if you're pushing away people who genuinely cared. But gradually, if you stay the course, this silence begins to transform. It starts to cleanse, to calm, to heal. And then a different kind of solitude may emerge. Not the aching loneliness of absence, but the empowering solitude of total presence with yourself. It's the solitude of the strong, the quiet confidence of one who no longer betrays their own needs to keep others close. In that reclaimed inner space where confusion once reigned, clarity begins to enter. Where anxiety once churned, peace starts to settle. And where a sense of neediness once lived, a new kind of strength takes root. The strength of being whole and complete within yourself. The process of becoming who you truly are often requires you to step back from the crowd, to gently disidentify from the masks you've worn, and to walk your own path, even if it means walking alone for a while. This is precisely what you're doing when you decide to become consciously unavailable. You're not fleeing the world, you're returning to your truest self. It's at this pivotal point that you stop being merely a reactor to external events and become a conscious creator of your own experience. You cease to be primarily shaped by circumstances and instead begin to shape your reality from a place of inner alignment. Those people who feel uncomfortable with your newfound boundaries often reveal, unintentionally, that they were more invested in the role you played than in the real you. And now that you no longer fit